G'day. Okay, now I'd like to speak a little bit about feeling. How we feel about things, feeling. Now, also I'm going to speak about feeling in relation to geometrical thought harmonics, the language of thought, language of mind, geometric structures that represent different types of feeling. Okay, so to start with, what is feeling? You could look it up in the dictionary. You might come up with a few different definitions of what feeling is. But as I've said before, geometry is the best way to get a proper definition of states of mind through its geometric structure, as in the basic elements of the language, triangles, squares, pentagons, hexagons, all the sort of stuff. So when you analyse a structure and you find those particular designs of thought, you can get a lot better idea of just the makeup of that particular way of thinking, design of thought, attribute of the mind. Okay, so the basics. Feeling is an expression of emotional intelligence. An expression of emotional intelligence. Okay. Also, as said before, we have emotional thought, we have mental thought, and we have physical thought. And to get a better idea of what that means is, okay, a hypothesis. When we make a suggestion, that's a hypothesis. We hypothesize that something might be a certain way or whatever. So emotional thought is suggestive. All hypotheses are formed through emotional thought, suggestive thought. Now, in geometric structure, an equator, let's say the equator of our planet, that would be a center dissecting plane that divides the sphere in halves, an equator. So with non-polar, because planets are polar, they revolve around a certain spin axis, and therefore the equator is just that one emotional trait. But in geometric spheres, there can be a multiple of emotional planes within that sphere. So therefore the sphere isn't polar. It has a number of different axes, but not rotating around any one. Pardon me. Tickle in the throat. Okay, so they're more or less equators, center dissecting planes, which explains that more precisely. Center dissecting dissects the sphere in halves, center dissecting. So emotional thought is center dissecting in geometry. Physical thought, the external facets of a sphere are physical facets, physical planes, physical designs of thought. All the other planes within that sphere, except for center dissecting, are mental planes. They detail the suggestion. Okay, so like we said, we have emotional, mental, and physical. We have hypothetical, which is the suggestion. Then we detail the suggestion through mental thought to form a theory. then we experiment with the details to form a practical thought. So emotional, mental, physical, hypothetical, theoretical, and practical thought. Emotion is suggestive. Mental thought details the suggestion. Physical thought experiments with the details to bring it into physical reality, bring it into the physical. Because a suggestion isn't physical, it's not something that is tangible. It's more or less, well, this might be possible. Possibility. Okay, and I guess you would say emotional thought is all about possibilities. Mental thought is all about probabilities, theories, and physical thought, that's just what it is. It's making something real, something that's become tangible, actual. Okay, so feeling, an expression of emotional intelligence. Emotion is suggestive. Intellect, as said before, is represented by a square. Intellect is receptive and constructive. It takes on board and builds upon concepts. It accumulates thoughts. It's also adaptive. Intellect is adaptive. Receptive and constructive, takes on board and builds upon concepts. So we have emotional intelligence, which suggests what to take on board and build upon. Emotional intelligence is suggestive, suggests what to take on board and build upon. Feeling is an expression of what has been suggestively taken on board and built upon. That's what feeling is, an expression of what has been suggestively taken on board and built upon through intellect. And we have a variety of different types of feeling. You have nature, which is an attitudinal expression, a sensory expression, because attitude is an intellect-based sense. Attitude is the position a body takes in relation to an environment. So with attitudinal feeling, or feeling suggests behavior, so attitudinal feeling would suggest attitudinal behavior. Nature is attitudinal behavior, the position a body takes in relation to how it feels. That's what nature is, the position a body takes in relation to how it feels. About the self, about the environment, and about the experiences it has within the environment. Okay, next we'll talk about the most common ones first. We have nature, an attitudinal expression of feeling, but we're focusing more on the feeling side at the moment. So that's more or less an initial state of feeling. It's unbiased. It's more or less, it isn't polar, let's put it that way. It's non-polar. Basic feeling is non-polar. It's not polarized by any particular trait or design of thought. In essence, you could call it common feeling, unbiased feeling, fundamental feeling. Then we have awareness-based feeling, but it's polarized. It's polar. It's not necessarily polarized, but it is polar. Now, it has an equator, whereas basic feeling didn't have any one particular equator, has three square planes of emotional intellect, but it can rotate on any of those particular square planes as the axes. But awareness-based feeling has an equator of a center point hexagon. Center point hexagon, as spoken before, when you put a point in the center of a hexagon and connect the outside points to that center point, it creates 6 equilateral triangles, all focused inwards to a common center. And in geometrical thought harmonics, we call that center an agreement. An agreement of that particular trait. Now, a hexagon represents love, and sense is focused creative thought or focused imagination. Those equilateral triangles connected to the center represent creative thought or imagination, and they're focused inwards to an agreement. But focused creative thought is a sense. Sense is focused creative thought or focused imagination. It labels, recognizes, and recalls memory. It categorizes memory. Sense categorizes memory. It also visualizes thoughts. Sense visualizes thoughts into our reality. Okay, visualizes thoughts. So awareness, center point hexagon, is a sense. It's also an agreement, and it's love-based. So awareness is a love-based sense agreement. Love-based sense agreement. Love is unconditional acceptance, which forms programs, reflex responses, and impulses. Okay? So awareness is a sensory impulse. Sensory impulse, a sense agreement, and it's love-based. Okay, now with that center point hexagon, the diagonals of that hexagon from one point to the opposite point, if we actually have the squares of emotional intelligence all forming an apex, actually. So in that case of the hexagon, we have three emotional squares of intellect forming an apex, top and bottom, becomes polar or equatorial, let's put it that way. Has an equator. It equates, so awareness equates that feeling. Awareness-based feeling. It's a sensory feeling, awareness-based feeling. Awareness-based feeling is respect. Feeling suggests behavior, so awareness-based feeling suggests awareness-based behavior. Respect is awareness-based behavior. It's also love-based. So respect is love-based behavior. Okay, I'm just going to adjust the sunlight here. Bear with me for a second. Okay, respect. Awareness-based behavior. And awareness-based feeling is respect. Love-based feeling. Love-based feeling is respect. Then we have belief-based feeling. Belief is represented in geometry as a decagon. So it has a decagon equator with 5 emotional squares of intellect forming apexes, top and bottom. Again, that form of feeling is equatorial, equator-based. Belief becomes the equator of that structure. Belief-based. Belief is a declaration of personal preference or choice. Choice is a declaration of personal preference. Preferentiality. Belief is a product also of two overlapping pentagons of motive, personal thought, or consciousness. So belief becomes interactive or experiential. Motivation. Experience-based consciousness. We form beliefs through our conscious experiences, which simplifies a little bit easier. We form beliefs through our conscious experiences. Okay, so belief-based feeling. Feeling suggests behavior, so it's belief-based behavior. Belief-based behavior is trust. Trust is belief-based behavior. Okay. Now, so we have fundamental feeling, awareness-based feeling, belief-based feeling. Now, we can have products. You could say evolutions of those states of feeling. Let's say progressions. Progressions of those particular states of feeling. So if you, in geometry, nature is represented by an octahedron. An octahedron has 8 equilateral triangle external facets, 6 points, and each of those points is an apex of a square-based pyramid. 6 square-based pyramids directed outwards to form those 6 points. Okay, so it's an attitudinal expression of feeling. Now, if let's say we use one of those squares, emotional squares, as an equator, so it becomes, in essence, you could look at that, and even though it's formed by 6 square-based pyramids directed outwards, but 2 of them connected at their bases forms that particular structure, and then it becomes a product of 6 square-based pyramids directed outwards. So if we take that 2 square-based pyramids connected at their bases, an apex at the top, apex at the bottom, and then we multiply that, we have 2 of those octahedrons. More or less overlapping at an equator, because then it becomes equatorial, equator-based. So it becomes a product of 2 squares of intellect, which forms an octagon. An octagon is a product of 2 overlapping squares. Okay, so it's interactive or experience-based intelligence. Represents morality. Morality is a product of experience-based intelligence. The intellect is receptive and constructive, takes on board and builds upon concepts. So more or less, takes on board, so morality takes on board and builds upon experiences. It is experiential judgment. That's what morality is. Experiential judgment, according to what we have learned from experience. Okay, morality will form codes of conduct from morality. So we have those 2 octahedrons. Becomes equatorial, an octagon plane as the equator. I said octagon of morality. So that becomes moral-based attitudinal feeling. Moral-based attitudinal feeling. Feeling suggests behavior, so it's moral-based attitudinal behavior. Virtue. Virtue is moral-based attitudinal behavior. Virtuous behavior. Moral-based. Virtue is moral-based. Moral-based. Okay. So if we go to the awareness-based feeling, awareness-based behavior, it's not attitudinal in essence in that particular state. It's not formed by square-based pyramids. It has, like I said, the center point hexagon as the equator, love-based sense agreement. So if we take two of those center point hexagons, overlap another one onto that, and then that equator, two sixes, hexagon has 6 external points, have two overlapping, that's 12 points. 12 points. Now, that becomes 12 points is synchronicity, a dodecagon. Becomes a dodecagon, two overlapping hexagons. Dodecagon. Synchronicity. Synchronicity. Or coordination. Now, synchronicity is a product of 4 equilateral triangles of creative thought or imagination overlapping, 4 threes, 12, 3 squares of intellect overlapping, 3 fours, 12, 2 hexagons of love overlapping, 2 sixes of 12, center point hexagons overlapping awareness, interactive or experience-based awareness, interactive or experience-based imagination, and interactive or experience-based intelligence. Creative intelligence, synchronicity, coordination. Now, in that state, because there's 12 points on the equator, 3 squares of intellect, those squares become the bases of square-based pyramids, directed upwards and downwards to form apexes at the top, apex at the bottom. So that becomes a product of 3 octahedrons of nature, overlapping to form the 12 points. It represents, because the initial state of that was respect, so it becomes synchronized respect, coordinative respect, respectful coordination, becomes mutual respect. That becomes mutual respect, synchronicity based, synchronized nature, synchronized attitudinal behavior, and synchronized respect. Okay, now we go to belief-based feeling. A decagon equator of belief or choice. Overlap another decagon onto that equator to form 20 points of an icosagon. 2 overlapping decagons of belief or choice. Now that icosagon represents, in the mind, identity. Identity. We identify with something, an identity. Now those 20 points become a product of 4 pentagons of motive, personal thought or consciousness, overlapping, 5 squares of intellect, overlapping, 2 decagons of belief or choice, overlapping. If we take those 5 squares of intellect, use them as the bases of square-based pyramids, directed upwards and downwards to form an apex at the top, apex at the bottom. becomes a product of 5 octahedrons of nature. It represents, as the icosagon equator represents identity, then it becomes identity-based nature, or identity-based attitudinal behavior, or identified attitudinal behavior. Identified attitudinal behavior, that's personality. Personality is identified attitudinal behavior. A personality of the mind is an identified attitudinal behavior of that mind. And that mind can have an infinite number of personalities. Not separate from the mind, just aspects of that mind. Behaviors that the mind expresses in certain situations, certain circumstances or conditions. We respond to those circumstances or conditions with a certain type of behavior to suit those conditions, those circumstances. It can be passive, aggressive, all different types of behavior to suit the circumstances or conditions that we're exposed to. Okay, so we have attitudinal behavior, nature. We have moral-based nature, virtue. We have mutual respect, synchronized nature. We have identified nature, or identified attitudinal behavior, personality. And we could go on and on and on. Every multiplication, but all of them end up becoming products of nature, attitudinal behavior, octahedrons. The awareness-based, when you add another awareness-based feeling to that, form the 12 points, 3 squares. The decagon, add another one to that, becomes 20 points, 5 squares. So they all become progressions, natural progressions of nature, a progressive nature, the evolution of nature. Nature, virtue, mutual respect, personality, all progressions of nature. Synchronized nature, identified nature, all that stuff. Now, they're the basic structures. I gave them first, just to show the elements, the designs of thought that make up those progressions of feeling. But feeling itself, receptive and constructive, that's what intellect is. An expression of what has been suggestively taken on board and built upon. So when we're having a discussion with somebody, verbal discussion, obviously, people are talking, listening, maybe. Okay, so sometimes the words that are being spoken don't match the feelings that come with the words. So when we're listening to someone talking, we're hearing their words, but we get a feeling. We get feelings unconsciously or subconsciously from that person. Impressions we get from that person while they're talking. Impressions. Intellect is receptive, takes on board and builds upon concepts. Okay, so we take on board these feelings that we pick up unconsciously or subconsciously, unconsciously or subconsciously, sorry, tickling the throat again, from that person. And we think, God, what they're saying doesn't, I feel I don't feel real good about something and I don't know what it is. The words seem to be okay, but I'm getting these feelings that don't sort of make any sense, don't match up to the feelings, don't match up to the words, sorry. Because what we're taking on board and building upon is that person's true communication, how they feel, how they are feeling. So what they're speaking, the words that are being spoken, sometimes people don't express their feelings into words. They more or less either don't like the way they're feeling about something, about a person, about the environment, whatever, or they want to disguise their true intentions. So they say a whole lot of stuff that they think the other person wants to hear to make them trust them, to feel comfortable with what they're trying to do. But it's the feelings that are important, very, very important. We could get by without words, actually, and pick up people's feelings. Their true intention, we'll be picking up their true intentions. And we would respond to those true intentions. Intuition is guidance of feeling. That's what intuition is, part of intuition. There's different aspects of intuition, but one aspect of that is guidance of feeling. Intuitive nature, guidance of feeling. We pick up feelings. Animals are very intuitive. They'll pick up, they'll feel something about the climate. Something doesn't feel quite right. And they'll respond to those feelings. And those feelings could have been accumulated into memory to form instinct. Therefore, the feelings that they're picking up and the memory of those feelings they've had before about certain circumstances or situations will trigger that particular memory. They'll respond instinctively to those feelings. That's how it all works. Instinct is actually the memory of behavior, memory of attitudinal behavior, the memory of personalized attitudinal behavior. Instinct is the memory of intuitive nature, intuitive behavior. Behavioral logic, memory of behavior. That's what instinct is, the memory of behavior. How we behaved in a certain situation, and therefore we recall that memory of how we behaved in that certain situation. And that's how we respond with similar behavior, because we remember how we behaved, what we did, how we reacted at that particular time, and then we automatically react the same way. It becomes subconscious, reflex response, an impulse. Okay, so feeling is so important. How we feel suggests how we will behave within an environment. And the environment is just our circumstances, our conditions. So I guess I can probably leave it at that. They're the basic, like I said. But feeling, like I said, is suggestive. The power of suggestion. Receptive and constructive. Takes on board and builds upon concepts. What we take on board, what we're feeling, take on board, build upon those feelings. We discussed before about the placebo effect, the power of suggestion. Take on board and build upon concepts. Accept them to be real. Power of suggestion. We respond to those suggestions. Determines our behaviour. Can determine how the body responds and reacts automatically to particular situations and circumstances. Without us even thinking about it, the body can respond. Okay, so is there anything I can add to that feeling? Feeling. No, I think we'll leave it at that. Like I said, this was just a short sort of summary of those particular feelings, suggestions, which can be utilised. People's feelings can be utilised once we recognise how they behave in certain situations. We can predict their behaviour quite often. Become predictable. Automatic reflex responses. Impulses. That's how that person normally behaves in those sort of situations. So, like I said, they can become predictable. Can be used sometimes by people who are trying to lead you in a particular direction, want you to respond a certain way, certain times, to manipulate behaviour. Business people can do that, politicians can do that. Once they recognise the nature of the beast, they can use that to sell their products or to sell their ideas, get people on board. Political parties, like I said, also businesses who want to sell products, they need to understand the nature of the beast, their clientele, their audience. So if you're not a very nice person, or if you're an opportunist, you can use that to your advantage. It's always happening, actually. Subliminal messages, emotional messages to trigger an emotional state within us. You watch an advertisement, can trigger emotional states, make you behave a certain way. Happens all the time. So anyway, like I said, we're going to leave it at that. And I hope somebody got something from this. Hope it's not too complicated. Now, I would appreciate comments. If what I'm talking about is too complicated, then I will attempt to try and simplify it if I can. I simply need to know how it is being taken on board by people, whether they understand it or not. So if possible, comments will help. If there's something you don't understand, I'll do my best to explain it in a different way if I can. Because understanding us is very, very important. Understanding the self, know thyself, very, very important. To know why you think a certain way, why you behave a certain way. how the body reacts and responds, why it gets sick, how it can be healed, all through thinking, feelings, suggestions that has been suggestively taken on board and built upon. Can make us sick, can make us healthy. Okay, so thank you. Like I said, please leave a comment if you don't understand something, so I can try to help you to understand whatever that is. That would be greatly appreciated. And anyone who wants more information about geometrical thought harmonics, all this sort of stuff, please revert to my website, alchemira, alkamirar.com, alchemira.com. There's a whole lot of stuff up there, free PDFs, everything's free. I'm not trying to sell or monetary sell anything. I'm trying to share what I know, what I have learnt, what I now understand about us. So everything's up there if you're interested in that. And again, if you find something there that you don't understand, leave a comment. Just leave a comment. That would be fantastic. Thank you.